Welcome, everybody, to an all-new episode of the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I am Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us for our penultimate episode of the year. We're going to come back at you next week and the following week with our year in review, our wrap-up for 2024. But right now, this is the last one where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty here of what is happening coming up. Because we had a great card last weekend. We have one coming up this weekend. We're going to get into all that here on SportsGrid. Talk about everything going on in combat sports. So thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody has a happy holidays, happy holiday season, and looking forward to a big 2025 in the fight game, and we'll be here to do it all with you. But first, let's get into what we have on the show today. Coming up later on, we have the light heavyweight champ, Jared, Captain Deadpool Warren, coming on with us to talk about his fight coming up this weekend against Mike the Marine Richman as he defends that title for the first time. We'll also talk out to PFL analyst Dan Hardy, of course, longtime fighter, longtime MMA expert. The analyst and broadcaster for the PFL was just out for their PFL European Championship fights that we're going to talk about later in the show as well with him and on our own. And we'll see if we talk a little bit about some lights out stuff going on as well out in California. All that coming up on today's episode of the Combat Sports Report. But let's get right into what we have going on, because we have an awesome fight card coming up to close out the year for the BKFC this weekend down in Hollywood, Florida, December 21st, 8 o'clock Eastern on DAZN, BKFC Hollywood, Florida. And we have two titles on the line. It's going to be exciting. Can't wait to watch it with all of you. Main event, the top one that we're going to watch, last one of the night, is going to be the light heavyweight championship between Jared, Captain Deadpool Warren, and Mike the Marine Richman, as we mentioned. Now, of course, Marine Richman 6-2 in the BKFC. I lost back-to-back fights to Lorenzo Hunt and Dave Mundell for titles. Decided to hang it up at that point. Then all of a sudden, this year, came back after almost a year away. Has a fight against Eric Lozano, beats him, and now getting thrown into the title picture here in this division against the champion, Jared, Captain Deadpool Warren. Warren 7-2, with one no contest in the BKFC. Has gone 4-0 with one no contest in his last 5 fights, including getting that title against Jomi Escoboza, who he fought in June for the second time in this stretch. He fought Escoboza, Jay Jackson, Danny Christie over the pond. He fought Jomi again, and of course there's that one no contest fight thrown in that mix as well. But great, impressive performance against a tough guy in Escoboza to get this title. Now he defends it for the first time, the belt that he chased for a long time, and he gets the Marine Richman. This is going to be an interesting fight because a lot of people, if you look at the BKFC site NEP, they have how these fighters see it breaking down, and it's about split. People picking the Marine, people picking Captain Deadpool. We're going to go with Jared Warren on this one because he got about 6 inches of height and reach on Mike Richman. Richman's got power. He's a tough dude. But he's had one fight coming back, and all of a sudden he's going to jump into this title mix against a guy who has fought the best of the best over and over again. I mean, let's not forget, Danny Christie was a champion at light heavyweight over in Europe when he went over there and put a pummeling on him. Now he dropped divisions. He's, doing a great job down there in the lesser division, but he, then fought Dave Mundell for his title, didn't get it. But Danny Christie was a guy who is one of the best over in Europe, and Jared Warren went over to his side of the pond and dominated him. So I don't think that while Marine has power, I don't think he's on that level yet. And let's not forget, Jared's going to have a little insight there from, of course, Dave Mundell, his teammate, fighting Mike Richman for the title at 185. So now he has that insight. He knows what it takes to beat him. He's going to have reach. He's going to have height. Probably have a little extra size on fight night. I'm going to go with Captain Deadpool keeping his belt here against the Marine Richman. As long as he can use that length and keep him off and make sure he doesn't get caught by one of those big bombs, I think he goes into 2025 as the champion in this division. Someone else who I think is going to keep their title is the misfit, Christine Faria, who is defending her title, the flyweight title, of course, in the women's division against Christine Vicens. Now, Vicens was someone that we were wondering if they were going to kind of jump over Jade Masang Wong, being active, having a win over Wong, doing great things in that division. Did not. Wong got her shot, and she fell flat. Didn't even seem like she really wanted to challenge the champion at all. It was a very, disheartening fight to watch. We expected a lot of great things from there, from what we've seen from both these ladies, and we even heard from the misfit afterwards how, unimpressed and annoyed she was with the fight. She wanted to get right back in there. Probably not as quick as she wanted to, but now she gets her chance to still get in there before the year is out and defend this again against Vicens, who's number 2 in that division, undefeated in the BKFC, and coming off a win over Melanie Shaw. Faria, of course, coming off that win, as we said, over Jade Masang Wong. Before that, the 2 wins over Beck Rawlings. 9-1, 7 wins in a row. She is seemingly unbeatable in this 125-pound division. We'll see if Vicens can do some damage and do what many women have not been able to. It's been a long time since the Misfit lost a fight in the BKFC. Now, the Misfits got a little trash talk going against Vicens, saying that, she'd only focus on fighting. That's all that matters to her. But Vicens, has got to go cook dinner from her husband. Has got to go pick up her kids. That she's got other things going on, isn't focused. And obviously, we've talked to her, and she's a business owner as well. I don't think that necessarily goes against her. Sure, it could divide focus, but, I know that she's had issues with other women in the fight game who maybe take their focus to OnlyFans and modeling and some of these other things that where they're trying to make money by their looks and not their fights. I don't think that applies to Christine Vicens. I think that, she's focused, she is tough, but still, no disrespect to her, she's not the Misfit. So I'm going to roll with the Misfit winning this fight as well. At heavyweight, you have Leonardo, the Cuban assassin Perdomo versus Levi Costa. Costa 1-1 the BKFC, 2-2 in bare knuckle overall. He's got wins in the BKFC over Sanchez, got a loss against Josh Copeland, a win over Josh Burns in another organization, and lost to Gustavo Trujillo. So all tough fighters in this heavyweight division, but now he's going against Perdomo, a.k.a. El Zombo, who I think probably should just be called a Personondora, a.k.a. the Steamroller in Spanish. That's what this guy has done to this heavyweight division. He's number 2 right now in these rankings, 5-0 in the BKFC, and has just gone through everybody. First round finishes of all his opponents, including Leo Bercia and Steve Banks in the last 2 fights. Names that we have seen in the heavyweight division cause trouble for a lot of people, did not cause any trouble for Perdomo. Only 2 of his fights have even gotten out of the first minute. I don't expect this one to either. No disrespect to Costa, but Perdomo just seems on a trajectory right now for a title shot. I mean, if he wins this fight, now we know, of course, that Mick Terrell is going to be tied up at Knucklemania 5 at the end of next month, defending his belt against Big Ben Rothwell, who isn't even in the rankings for some travesty. But still, if he gets that win, and whoever wins that fight, how do you not put Perdomo in a title fight? The guy's number 2 in the division. Number 1 in the division is Arnold Adams, who hasn't even fought since he lost that title to Terrell last year. So get this win, and I think Perdomo starts 2025. Maybe not right away, obviously, but maybe in the first 3, 4, 5 months with a title shot at heavyweight. Big win for This could be a big win for him if he gets it. You also have lightweight Brian El Gallo Duran, of course, in his home area down in Hollywood, Florida, fighting Kasim Caution Ruffin 2-0 in the BKFC, both by finish. Duran 6-1 in the BKFC, had been on a tear, then all of a sudden had lost his last fight to Kai Stewart in June for that title. Now trying to bounce back. We haven't was down at featherweight. Now he's coming in at lightweight here. We'll see what he can do with a little extra weight. A very exciting fighter always, loves to run his mouth, loves to throw his fists. We'll see if he can give some problems, if he gives some caution to Kasim Caution Ruffman, or Ruffin's going to go right through him like he has his first 2 opponents. Be very entertaining either way. You also have Justin Ibarola, Joy Boy in the bantamweight division, going against Derek Perez. Very important fight for Ibarola. We were talking about him last week when we talked to Keith Rockstar Richardson. I forgot that he had this fight coming up. I said, hey, do you think you and Ibarola should match up for a contender fight? Well, if they do, it would have to come next year because Ibarola fighting here in this fight against Perez. Perez 2-3, lost 2 of his last 2 fights and 3 of his last 4. Ibarola now is on a win streak after beating Rick Russo and Justin Street in his last 2. Already 3 fights this year. This will be his 4th. He seems destined to possibly get a title shot or at least a matchup against Richardson if he gets the win here. You also have G. Cutman Perez fighting at flyweight, 4-1 against Cary Caprio. You have a great middleweight bout. This one might be one that could possibly steal the spotlight. Down on the card at middleweight between Francesco Ricci versus big boy Blake Lacaze. Now, Lacaze hasn't had a great record, but he's a tall, big guy with some power, and going against Ricci, a former champion in this division who's on a 2-fight loss streak, but against Dave Mundell and Eric Lozano. So very tough fighters. Can he show that power, that Italian power we have seen from him again, and knock out Lacaze and get back into the title picture? We will see. Also, you have Tyler Randall fighting at flyweight against Austin Lewis. So plenty of great fights throughout this card, top to bottom. What a gift for us all to watch right before Christmas. Can't wait to see it. When we come back, we'll talk to Captain Deadpool, Jared Warren, as he defends his title at the top of this card this coming weekend. How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out. Just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest, and we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. When he texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
Lincoln!
But he had that program was already going there.
Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. We got a great card in the BKFC closing out the year this coming weekend. We just previewed, talked about all the great fights we have on that, but of course, 2 title fights. Those are the main attractions, and the one at the top of the card, the one headlining it, is, of course, the Florida's own Jared Captain Deadpool Warren, the champion at the light heavyweight division, coming in here and talking to us now. Jared, thanks so much for joining us. We're looking forward to this fight. You defending your title against the Richman, the Marine, of course. We'll talk about that in just a couple minutes, but first, I want to talk about what you guys have been going through down there. Obviously, for people who may have missed it, we talked about it on our Thanksgiving show kind of at the end, trying to get some love out there. We talked about it once before that when it first happened as well. But, you and Crystal Pittman, of course, down there in Tampa going through some tough times after the storms that ripped through there, the back-to-back hurricanes that ripped through the Florida area. Tell us about what was going on, what happened with you guys in your house and the flooding, and, how things have been since.
Oh man, it was definitely a rough go the last few months. The hurricanes hit us hard, flooded my house really bad, lost, majority of everything I own. We had to, throw away all of our furniture, pull up all our floors, pull out all the walls because, once it soaks in, it can create mold real easily. So, the house was completely gutted, and, we were doing a mix between staying in hotels and Airbnbs, and towards the end, I had a buddy loan me his RV, so we, we're living in that for a couple months. But just been grinding, man. I haven't been able to take off work during the period, but when I wasn't at the fire department, working on the house, had a couple of key good friends helping me out, and now we're on kind of the other side of it. A couple weeks ago, we were finally able to start sleeping back in the house. It's not finished. We still got a lot of finishing touches to do, but overall, it's been coming around nice, and it's really awesome to be able to, sleep in the house and, start to get a feel of normalcy back.
I'm sure it has, when you have all the things you're going through, not just the breakdown of everything and the loss of what you have, but, then you got to deal through insurance and all their, BS as they try to mess with you as you're trying to just get your life back together. And as you said, you being a firefighter, it's not like you could just say, all right, I'm going to go take some time here and deal with my issues, because it wasn't just you, hit hard there as well. Of course, and it happened at a terrible time too, because I know you guys were supposed to be, Hall of Shift MMA and Shift Combat Sports, supposed to be out there in Spain supporting Dave Mundell. Unfortunately, I know you guys couldn't. What was it like, though, from your perspective as, a firefighter, as a first responder out there, dealing with not just your own issues and your own problems there, but trying to help people through their stuff. What has it been like for the community at large dealing with those issues, the issues and the flooding and all the seawater and stuff that came in to the area and messed with people's lives?
Yeah, a lot of people got hit hard, and whenever I'm at work, I was able to see a lot of that, and I would try and at least communicate with them some. Some of the people they try and lean on you and be like, yeah, we lost everything, this and that. And I'm like, well, probably doesn't make you feel any better, but the rest of us aren't immune to it. I was like, it happened to myself as well. But hopefully we can all push through, and a few months won't be anything but a bad memory. But it's definitely been trying. You know what I mean? Most of the time I just would work, and when I was on my days off, I would put my time into training and didn't have a lot of things I had to do otherwise besides your typical day-to-day stuff. But that completely changed. Just working on the house sun up to sundown, and not till we got to the 8-week point from the fight, I kind of had to start changing it up and be like, listen, I'm going to work until 4 or 5 o'clock, and then I got to go to the gym, and I got to put in my time there, because it's a very unforgiving sport, and it's up to you whether you show up or not. And if you show up and you're not ready, then that's on you. So I'm not going in with any excuses. I never considered canceling this fight. It just adds a little bit of extra adversity to it. But at the end of the day, I feel good. I feel strong. I feel ready to go in there and dominate.
We're looking forward to seeing you get in there and do your thing. You've looked better and better the more we've seen you, the more you've been in bare knuckle. And I would say that Danny Christie and the Escoboza title fight were some of the best that we've seen from you in your BKFC career. I'm sure you feel that way as well. And no one would fault you, of course, with what you were going through to say, you know what, I can't take this fight. I need to focus on everything going on. So what was what's the driving force for you to get back in there and do this fight and defend this title for the first time under these trying circumstances you've been going through?
It's just honestly like deep within, I feel like I can handle it and still perform. If I was really at a point where I didn't think I was going to be at my best and I wouldn't be able to successfully defend the title, then I would have had to make that phone call. But I do feel that regardless of circumstances, I can go in there and get the job done, man.
And we're looking forward to seeing that fight. It should be a great battle between you guys. Tell us before we get into the Richman fight, what have you felt about your last couple of performances? I mean, Danny Christie was a champion over there in Europe. You went there, obviously didn't come home with a belt because you're not from Europe, but you dominated the champion. You even sent him, into another division pretty much to go get beat up by your teammate. And then you fought Escoboza, who you guys had a great battle the first time, and you really just showed a different level and kind of picked him apart throughout that whole fight to win that title.
Yeah, it goes to show you never know what to expect. I pictured the fight with Danny Christie, being a war that went a few rounds, but I think it was a classic, stylistic matchup. For as bad and tough a dude he is, I think that my style just kind of threw him off, and that worked out for me, and it made it a much smoother night than I expected. I didn't go home with any marks on that one. And then, with Jomi, to his credit, even though he was on shaky legs, he kept getting up and he did finish the fight. So, my hat's definitely off to him for that.
Well, it was a great fight, both those fights, and we look forward to another great one for you this upcoming weekend against Mike the Marine Richman. It is Jared Captain Deadpool Warren, and we'll be right back with him here on the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all. Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report as we continue to talk to Jared Warren as he defends his title light heavyweight belt for the BKFC this upcoming weekend against Mike the Marine Richman down in Hollywood, Florida. Now, Jared, we've kind of danced around this fight. We've talked about everything leading up to it. Now we got to get into the nitty-gritty. You're fighting the Marine, who's obviously a tough dude, a formidable opponent. Another guy, we talked about Danny Christie. You beat him, and then he had to go fight Dave Mundell. Marine has lost to Mundell. Now you get to fight him, so it's gone the opposite way here. What are you looking at with this fight? Do you think, honestly, that, no disrespect to him, but he was off for a year, comes back, fights once, now fighting for the title. Do you think he deserves his chance at your belt? And what are you expecting when you go against him this coming weekend?
I don't know exactly how people look at it on paper as far as if he deserves it, for the circumstances you just said. But a couple things is, one, he's the only one in the top 5 that I haven't fought before. And, rematches get a little boring sometimes to me. But I honestly think, I think right now they might have him ranked 3rd. The rankings are always kind of all over the place. But I do think that he is, the toughest dude in the top 5. So I do think he deserves this fight. I'm glad that they offered it to him. I'm glad they offered it to me. I asked for it because I think he is one of the toughest dudes out there. I've had nothing but tough opponents. I'm not looking for any easy fights. You never get any short or long-term credit when you fight the gimmies and the tomato cans and stuff. And I don't think once you get towards the top that there's many of those anyways. But ultimately, yeah, I think he deserves it, and I'm glad that it's going down.
Now, obviously, you're going to have a big advantage in height and reach. How important is that for you to make sure to utilize that to avoid the big power shots that he can throw in a fight?
Yeah, I know I'm taller and longer than him, but I got a lot of power too. So if whether it goes on the inside or the outside, I can do damage from both. It just gives me a chance if I do want to use my reach, to kind of play that angle. But he's probably thinking that if he smothers me and gets in my face, that it'll be an advantage from him. But I feel plenty comfortable on the inside as well. So whatever way we end up pushing it is, I'm happy to go that way.
And of course, you have a great team behind you at Shift. You guys have shown how strong you are in the bare knuckle fight game, especially with both you and Dave as champions, and I'm sure you get a little extra insight from him having fought Mike before. I'm sure that helps, but you're going to fight your own game as well. We're looking forward to it. Should be an awesome fight. Can't wait to watch it. Everyone should make sure they check it out on DAZN this weekend. You versus the Marine Richman for the light heavyweight title. You talked about that top 5 in the division, how you fought all these guys before. How it's kind of just a rehash for a lot of them. Is there anybody that you're looking at for the future if you defend this title? Anybody that you have on your hit list? And, what is your plans for 2024? In 2022, a lot more active with 4 fights, kind of 2-3 fights the last couple of years. But of course, when you're waiting for title fights or you are the champion, that can slow things down sometimes. What's your outlook for 2025? Is it, just go right back through the top 5 that you fought before? Is it maybe even challenge at a different division? What are you looking for in the new year?
Couple of things. If I don't want to just throw Mike Perry out there just because he is kind of a name, but I brought him up several times. He brought me up once a while back in an interview. I like and respect the guy. If that's a possibility, I would love that fight. I don't know what BKFC has planned for him yet. So that's always been a big maybe on my mind. Like, I'd be happy if that comes to fruition. But otherwise, I got to say I'm very curious and excited to hear the details on this this big money tournament that President Feldman's been talking about. He threw the teasers out there, and he said the details are coming soon. I'm kind of guessing that he might release it the night of my fight, it being the last fight of the year. But either way, whatever the details are, whatever where the rules are going to be, I want to be a part of that. You know what I mean? So I'm excited to see where that goes.
I mean, who wouldn't be when there's $25 million allegedly up for grabs? Of course, Dave Feldman said 3 weeks he's going to release it. I think we're right on that timeline. So hopefully we get to hear more about that this upcoming weekend during your card, and we can get fighters like you involved. Of course, Jared, Captain Deadpool Warren, thank you so much for joining us. Give our love to Crystal Pittman as you guys both recover and get back to what you need to do with the BKFC. We're looking forward to seeing you fight and defend that title this upcoming weekend.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate your time, and I'll be happy to come back anytime in the future.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The holidays come with a touch of craziness, from unwrapping the latest storylines to the best betting insights. We've got everything you need to crank up the excitement this season. We can't promise there won't be a little yelling.
Played a decent schedule. They had maybe 500.
They just ruined my day.
But we can guarantee a whole lot of fun. Merry Christmas from all of us at SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoff.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. And now we're going to get into this great card we had this past weekend over on the zone, the PFL European Championships. We told you, don't be sleeping on these fights we had this weekend. There was some great action, some big winners. Not as big as obviously the $1 million checks, $100,000 to each winner in this case. Still no small chunk of change there, and that could definitely help change some lives. We're looking forward to seeing what we get from some of these champions as well as some of these other fighters. There were contracts awarded. There's so much going on over in Lyon, France this past weekend. Dan Hardy was there, taking it all in, calling all the action as he always does with the PFL, and he joins us now. Dan, thank you so much for your time. Happy holidays. And let's start right into these fights. Let's start talking about the title fights. One that I really enjoyed watching and, kind of reminded me a little bit of the fights just a couple weeks before that was this women's flyweight champion. We have Wisniewska getting the win here, first round TKO. Of course, this is the same belt that Dakota Ditcheva won last year and now is the PFL champ. Similar kind of thing here, early, quick finish for her. Does she have a similar career path if she continues to get these winning ways? What did you see from her in this title win for her?
Yeah, that was a real surprise. I don't think anybody expected a fast finish like that. Valentina Skatici went into the second round with Dakota in last year's final. Really gave her a tough test, but obviously this year around, Paulina Wisniewska just had her number. She was able to get that tie clinch. She landed a really good knee and then just never stopped punching until the referee got in the way. And the thing is as well, she's still young in her career. She's only had a few fights, but she had such an extensive amateur career that she's almost ready for the big fight straight away. So we'll certainly see what comes next for her. Really, really exciting prospect. It was unfortunate that Chanel Dyer fell out due to injury, but I would very much like to see Wisniewska versus Dyer at some point in the future. That would be a real interesting fight, but, just a fantastic event. And, for Jakub Kasuba to go 2 times in a row now, win the belt twice, we've got to see him progress into some bigger fights this time because I think he's more than ready for it.
Yeah, as you mentioned there, the record isn't a huge wealth of experience, but obviously with the first fight in the PFL getting that title shot, you knew there was a reason for it. She showed that, and we'll see what else can come from her. A lot of the European fighters, as the amateurs and winning some of those amateur titles sometimes has more regard than the U.S. fighters who want to go right for that payday. So, you get that extra experience before you get to the pros sometimes, and it certainly showed in her great title win and that $100,000 check she gets now. We also had the welterweight championship. Zendelli gets the submission in the first round. A great performance by him. Another quick fight, another quick finish. Is that something that we expected him to have that dominance and get that submission, or did you think this was going to go a little deeper?
No, I thought this one was going to be a real battle as well. Daniel Michelli has been very impressive in his first 2 fights in the PFL. Was able to stop both opponents in the first round. But Zendelli had a real battle in the playoffs with Jack Grant. It went the distance. Zendelli was bloodied and he was beaten up a little bit, but he was able to, do enough to get the win on the scorecards and progress to the final. And I was expecting, honestly, this one to go into the championship rounds. I thought Michelli was going to be able to keep the fight standing and force Zendelli to box with him a little bit. And we know, Daniel Michelli's got real power in his hands, but Zendelli just looked super slick. He made a real quick work of it. And as always, the grappling of Peter Zabota, who's his coach, shows through. You can really see that experience and pedigree in Zendelli's game.
And another big win for Kazuba, who gets his win there in the lightweight championship over Connor Hughes. A 4th round TKO, so a little bit more of a longer battle. We got a little bit more of the money's worth there in that one. What did you see from both these fighters as we got deep into the fight before we finally get the finish?
Well, I was so impressed with both of these guys. Connor Hughes has had a really good season so far, and he really looked good in the first couple of rounds. He dropped Kasuba a couple of times, and he was able to defend his takedowns. But then Jakub just showed his championship quality. When it got into the championship rounds, he was able to rally. He got the fight to the floor. He was able to hold positions and just, with the addition of elbows as well, which obviously I absolutely love. He was really able to do some good damage on the floor and get the referee to intervene. No doubt Connor Hughes will be back. He was a real tough test for Kasuba, but at the same time, Jakub, that's two years in a row now, and you really want to see what comes next for him when he progresses to the world scene and tests himself against those world-class fighters that we have on our roster.
And then we also had a bantamweight championship. We talked about, the check being a little small in the overall PFL titles, but still can be pretty big for, anybody. And Lewis McGrillen definitely made mention of that, said he feel like he just robbed the bank. I mean, sometimes in the fight game, as personality can help propel a fighter. If you're exciting to watch both on the mic, just as much as you are in the cage, it can, get you even further along quicker sometimes. I mean, this guy, I loved his personality. I loved, the way he was after the fight, the post-fight interview. Got a lot of energy, got a lot of personality, and that's always great to watch in a guy, especially when he's a champion that he is now in the bantamweight in Europe.
Yeah, he's an absolute superstar in the making, and has certainly become must-see TV this year. And you look back to the end of last year, the end of December, the last championship, where he wasn't in the brackets. He was fighting a showcase bout, and he came up short on that night. And to see his evolution since then, he got a dominant win over Matis Zaharov in his first fight this year, and then the fight against Dean Garnett it may well be the best fight I've ever seen on European soil. It was just an absolute wild fight. One of the best ever. It really is. If you've not seen it, go and check it out. Lewis McGrillen, Dean Garnett. Potentially a fight that we're going to see next year again. If we can get these guys rematched. But I have to also give a shout out to his opponent. Alexander Luster has had a really good year as well. Another fighter that I want to see return next year and try and get that $100,000. It's great money for fighters at this stage in their career. A lot of these guys are around 10 fights in, and to be able to make $100,000, it just takes that pressure off for a couple of years, where they know they can really focus on, taking the right fights and building themselves. And I think that these guys have. I mean, they both deserve the money, but obviously McGrillen has, put himself in a position now where everyone's talking about him and what he's able to do.
And speaking of money, we had a number of contracts, 3, I believe, handed out to the PFL in this card. Talk about some of the fighters who were able to get their ink on the dotted line there to maybe, propel themselves further in their MMA career with the PFL.
Yeah, this was really fun, to have Cedric Doumbé involved. And, we had 3 France v France matches, and the idea was that we gave 2 contracts out. We had a really good performance with Maheu Campanella winning by arm triangle. The third fight was Mateus Duragrin, and he was just a superstar all week. He was standing on the scales doing a Rubik's Cube and, just spoke to the fans really well. He had a great walkout. So I think his performance, as well as the rest of it, gave really won Cedric Doumbé over. But then the other kid, Salvo, I mean, he was making his pro debut. There was a lot of pressure, and he just had a completely dominant performance over a very tough opponent. And I just think Cedric looked at him and thought to himself that this guy's still got a lot of potential. Let's also give him a contract, and then we'll build these guys out on an undercard of maybe one of Cedric's events. But it was a fun little event to have within an event, and I think all the fighters that got the contracts were really pleased to have Cedric involved.
I'm sure it's changing some of the champions' lives with the big checks, changing some of those other fighters up and coming with just being on the roster. I'm sure that a big great way to end the year for the PFL, a great thing to do. Around the holidays, everyone's going to have a happy holidays. I got that win. What were some of the other fighters that maybe impressed you in the last 30 seconds we have with you? Some of the other fighters that impressed you with their wins on this card? Because it wasn't just these title fights up top. There were plenty of other action at various weight classes.
Man, I've got to give a shout out to Patrick Habarora. He was just absolutely fantastic. One of the best right hooks I've ever seen in mixed martial arts. Check it out. It's all over social media. He's definitely a superstar in the making.
And, of course, a superstar on the PFL broadcast every time is Dan Hardy. We love talking to him, love listening to him, break down fights for the PFL. Thank you so much, man. Happy holidays. Can't wait to talk to you in 2025 about all the great things coming down the pike for PFL.
Thank you very much, my friend. Always good talking to you.
and you're not riding with Joshie Allen, where have you gone? Don't tell me it's your Philadelphia Eagles, Donnie. Who's the team for you?
You see that Vince Lombardi trophy that sits back here? That's a replica. And that's something that the Philadelphia Eagles have won as recent as 2017. The Buffalo Bills are notorious for making it to the Super Bowl and coming up lame, which they might be able to do. But my question is, can the Buffalo Bills even get to the Super Bowl?
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go here.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid. The holidays come with a touch of craziness, from unwrapping the latest storylines to the best betting insights. We've got everything you need to crank up the excitement this season. We can't promise there won't be a little yelling.
Played a decent schedule. They have maybe 500.
They just ruined my day.
But we can guarantee a whole lot of fun. Merry Christmas from all of us at SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Always great to catch up with Dan Hardy and pick his brain on things going on in the PFL. The man who's cage side for all the great action as he was this past weekend, where we had that great PFL European Championship card going on. We talked to you about it last week. We said, don't sleep on this card. This is going to be a lot of the fighters that, when you start to see some of them, they're going to filter in maybe to PFL or Bellator or some of these other series within the PFL umbrella. And, we've seen that before. Why don't we start talking a little bit about this and break down some of these fights, talk about what we saw, maybe what we can see in the future for the PFL starting with these title fights, because there was 4 of them. And they're mixed throughout the card. This wasn't a situation where it was just top of the card, title fights, and then the rest was just filler, don't know what's going on. These fights were sprinkled throughout, and we had some great action in all of them. Let's start with the women, because, we mentioned with this women's card, this women's fight, that, the standard bearer for why not to forget about these fights and why to pay attention, because look at what we saw with Dakota Ditcheva. Went and won the European title last year, came into the PFL full tournament and won that this year. So you never know who you are going to see, rise up these ranks in Europe and maybe make it onto a card that you're going to see coming up next year in 2025 with the PFL overall. And you know what? When you see Wisniewska, the way she won this title, it almost reminds you of a Ditcheva, almost reminds you of your Jacek, from the UFC, or Shevchenko, these great, stand-up fighters, and she certainly did that. Under a minute, she dispatched her opponent there. As you can see, the highlights right here, a little bit battle before, and then catches her with that knee. All the end from there, just pummeling her till the fight is called. A great performance by her, coming out strong, coming out fierce, showing that great kickboxing, and she gets the women's flyweight champion. Going to be awesome to see what's next for her. Do we get her more into the PFL? You heard Dan Hardy say that she doesn't have a huge record as far as professional experience, but a long amateur experience record, especially over there in Europe. Someone that, I'm sure many people over in Europe knew well of because of all her amateur fights. A lot of the competitions that you get in Europe and around the world sometimes have a little more mystique for amateur fighters over there than they do for U.S. fighters. A lot of U.S. fighters, whether it be glove boxing or other, combat sports, seem to jump probably a little earlier out of the amateur ranks into the pro to try to make that money. A lot of the amateur fighters over there like to, kind of go a little longer. You've seen many of them, go for Olympic fights in various combat sports and other things. So she has a lot of experience despite her, shorter professional record. And now she's shown that she is a badass, and we will see what becomes of her. Does she follow the path of Adicheva and make her way into the PFL tournament next year? Who knows? But she's $100,000 richer thanks to her win there in the Women's European Championship. We also had a great fight there at the welterweight championship between the men. Another quick finish there for Florim Zendelli. He gets the end of the first round submission. A great job by him to get his opponent on the ground, take the back, and just pummel him and open up the choke. Very easy for him, as you see there. A lot of times when you see submissions, people think, they just go for it, that maybe they are a grappling artist. Obviously had, great grappling with the way that he had that back locked up. But sometimes, they show that power and they soften them up with the punches before all of a sudden you get that rear naked choke, as he did in this title fight for him. So he gets the first round stoppage as well. And again, $100,000 richer and a belt around his waist as the European welterweight champion. Great job by Florim Zendelli. Then next up in the title fights, coming a little bit higher up the card, where we had two more of these. You had Jakub Kazuba, who stopped Connor Hughes. Great battle here against Hughes in the fourth round. The TKO victory for him, one that went a little deeper. Those first two were some quick first round finishes. Here, got to see a little more back and forth, but we also got to see him use this great ground and pound. You see the elbows, that you get to see later in these tournaments. Of course, for a lot of the PFL, usually early in the tournament, you can't use, elbows as much, especially on the ground. The knees are a little different in how they're used as well, because the last thing you want is those sharp elbows to open somebody up and make them get knocked out of a tournament, for the simple fact that they can't heal quick enough. When you have 3, 4, 5 fights in a year, which is something that a lot of MMA fighters don't have. A lot of times you do whatever you do, and then, you take that time to heal up before your next fight. It could be 4 to 6 months. You don't get that with the PFL, with the tournament format, and with the championship. So when you get to see these title fights, you get to see those elbows put in full play. It's awesome to watch them used. You get to see the full arsenal from some of these fighters, and we saw that from Kazuba there as he gets the victory and is the European lightweight champion now for the PFL. And then, who was probably my favorite fight, my favorite title winner of the night, and that is a great win by the PFL bantamweight champion now, the one and only Lewis McGrillen. If you don't know this guy, you're going to get to know him pretty soon, I'm sure, because put on a great performance to get his victory for the PFL Europe, and then celebrated in style with a great post-fight interview as well, talking about robbing the bank. And you see here, they had these little vignettes for all the fighters after they won. This was definitely the most entertaining one. Look, he walks off, comes back, shows the check, gets the money guns going, dancing. This guy is living life to the fullest for him. He is happy. He is excited. And who wouldn't be getting that big check for $100,000 as he did right there? A great post-fight interview as well. Let's check out what he had to say after he won that title and that big check.
I just come in and rob the bank, mate. I come in like Anton Shakur, coming for that dough. But you know what? I just don't know what to say. Honestly, sometimes in my life I think, where's my life going and stuff like that. I'm just grinding. I'm get my head down, just grind. I go through trials and tribulations every day, not just in the gym, in my life. And you know what? You have to kill me to what I want. I'm a dog, man. I'm a fighter by heart. I was born to fight. I'll do anything to get what I want.
I love a guy who can speak well like that after he gets the win, talking about all the things he's gone through, but that nothing's going to stop him. He's a fighter. He's going to push through, and you're going to have to pretty much put him out, whether it be on a stretcher or, for hospital or the morgue. He's not going to stop unless you make him stop. And obviously that did not happen in this fight. He continues on and goes on to win the bantamweight championship for the PFL Europe and win some nice cash for him. A great performance by him. As we talk with Dan Hardy, also a bunch of contracts handed out to some French fighters, some local talent on that card. You also had some great fights at various weight classes. You had Aburgamirov at welterweight. You get a beautiful win against Opoli. You had, of course, catchweight battle between the Hobby Rora versus Safta. Hobby Rora with the victory there. An impressive performance by him. Looking forward to seeing what's coming up next. Maybe we'll even touch on that before we get out of here. Some of these awesome fights coming up for the PFL next year here on SportsGrid.
On, Donner, and Blitzen. Now, Rudolph, now!
Merry Christmas to all!
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
It's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
thinking!
But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Thank you so much to our guests that joined us today. Thank you so much to Jared. Captain Deadpool Warren is going to be defending that title this weekend down in Hollywood, Florida. BKFC on DAZN against Mike the Marine Richman. Should be a great battle between two very dangerous men who are trying to get that light heavyweight belt. Thank you so much also to Dan Hardy for joining us after being over in Europe for the PFL European Championships. Great card over there. That was on DAZN as well. Make sure you go back and check that out if you haven't, because who knows what we're going to see from some of these fighters in the future of the PFL. Some great performances to win European titles and get themselves $100,000 richer. Who doesn't want to get six figures right before the holidays, right? All that was some great action. Can't wait to see what is coming up next in 2025 for the PFL, and we'll touch on that before we get out of here. But first, let's touch on some of the things going around the world of the PFL with some different news, some fighters doing different things. And, of course, we had a bunch of cards in the last, 6 to 8 weeks where you had fighters winning big titles and, maybe changing their lives or at least making themselves, even more legendary in some regards. And they brought some of that back to where they come from, to where they're, training, to where they're living, and showing that off to people around the world. Let's start first with Cyborg. Of course, Chris Cyborg winning that belt in that PFL Super Fight card, the Battle of the Giants. And then got to take it back to Brazil, as you see there, taking it around to the various politicians and famous people in her home country of Brazil, showing off that hardware for the PFL, getting a little FaceTime with some bigwigs as the champion of the PFL and one of the most dominant women to ever put on those MMA gloves, whether it be in the UFC, Bellator, Strikeforce, no matter where she's fought. She's always been one of the most dangerous and scary women and continues to do so here with her victory here for the PFL and showing off that belt back in Brazil. Congratulations to her and the extra acclaim that she is getting from that title win. Also, someone who had a belt from the European Championships last year that we mentioned a couple times here, Dakota Ditcheva, getting that overall PFL belt and bringing it back to her team down at ATT, which, of course, as you see there behind her, no shortage of belts for that team. They've had a lot of champions, a lot of great fighters to come through there, and now she stakes herself as one of their, new best here with her title in the PFL after that dominating performance throughout the tournament, and especially in that last fight against Talia Santos, probably her toughest opponent, probably her biggest named opponent in her early career. She rips through her, shows how dangerous and how much of a badass she is as a new champion, and then goes and celebrates with her team there down at AT down in Florida. So congratulations to her getting to revel in that as well and get the love from everybody down at her camp. Other things going on in the world of combat sports, we mentioned January 25th. Talked about this a couple times. We've touched on it a little bit. We've got this great card. Of course, this one is the Road to Dubai card. It's headlined by Dagestan versus Ireland, where you have Nurmagomedov versus Hughes. That is going to be very interesting. Of course, some long time bad blood between some of those areas with, of course, Conor McGregor in his battles in the UFC against Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, we've had a little bit of a title change here. You have a heavyweight fight. We knew that Nemkov was going to be on that card, but as you see there in the post, it looks like we're going to finish a trilogy here, him against Corey Anderson at heavyweight. Now, these are the last two guys to hold the light heavyweight belt for Bellator. Now going to be facing off for the PFL at heavyweight as the co-main event of this card. Of course, the first time these guys fought, there was that clash of heads that unfortunately ended that fight in a no contest. They rematched, to which Nemkov took the title there, defended the title light heavyweight. He's given up that title, now moved up to heavyweight, and he's going to fight Corey Anderson. Two guys who are very dangerous, very exciting, and a great co-main event. So excited to watch that fight January 25th, as we are, of course, with that lightweight title fight, Nurmagomedov versus Hughes. Hughes put on a great performance for the PFL on that card in his last fight there against, of course, AJ McKee. Now he's going to be going for the title against his new opponent there. It's going to be very interesting. Can't wait to watch that, see how much of that bad blood carries over between those two countries. As we know, Conor McGregor's talked about maybe beating Hughes' card, possibly, to carry that over because, of course, you have the great fights going on with that Usman Nurmagomedov with Khabib in his corner. So we'll see. Do we get the bad blood continuing? Should be interesting. Great card from top to bottom. A lot of great other fights coming on that card that you can see as well for the Championship Series, Road to Dubai. Should be a great card. Looking forward to that in 2025. And, of course, a new tournament for the PFL, as we'll see. And maybe a new tournament for the BKFC, as you heard Jared Warren reference. Maybe we'll get some details on that this weekend. But many great things for 2025 in the fight community that we're going to be covering here on the Combat Sports Report. Thank you so much for joining us. Talk to you next week.
The holidays come with a touch of craziness, from unwrapping the latest storylines to the best betting insights. We've got everything you need to crank up the excitement this season. We can't promise there won't be a little yelling.
Played a decent schedule. They had maybe 500.
They just ruined my day.
But we can guarantee a whole lot of fun. Merry Christmas from all of us at SportsGrid.
I mean, this is week 16, and you're throwing this guy in the fire. I know the Giants suck, Scotty, but you got that backdrop. Just give it to Bijan 50 times if Penix isn't looking too well.
And I also think Penn State has an easy track. And I think, to be honest with you, Indiana, people are all going to say they should have never been there. And listen, I just wanted to say one last time before that happens that you can all kiss my ass.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
And you're not riding with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Where have you gone? Don't tell me it's your Philadelphia Eagles, Donnie. Who's the team for you?
You see that Vince Lombardi trophy that sits back here? That's a replica. And that's something that the Philadelphia Eagles have won as recent as 2017. The Buffalo Bills are notorious for making it to the Super Bowl and coming up lame, which they might be able to do. But my question is, can the Buffalo Bills even get to the Super Bowl?
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go here.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.